Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, Diverse Goddess. It's Hannah, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about the pain and burden of being a scapegoat within a family dynamic. So keep watching. So I have talked about what a scapegoat is within a narcissistic family dynamic, but what does a scapegoat really go through, and what is the pain that they carry? So I have mentioned in my video that I did on what is a scapegoat, I have mentioned that scapegoats carry all of the dysfunction and they take all of the brunt of their family, of their dysfunctional family. So they indeed do carry a lot. Well, for starters, they will carry a tremendous amount of shame. And they will carry a tremendous amount of shame is because they're always told that they are bad and that they are the bad ones. And so after a while, they start to feel they are to blame for everything. And some even start to believe that they are indeed the issue and problem. And so because they are told that they are the bad ones, they start to feel that they are bad, hence the shame. And they often have to carry this burden alone because they are always so isolated. They oftentimes feel abandoned by everybody, and they also feel misunderstood because of all the lies told about them. And not only because of all the lies told about them to others, but the lies that they are told directly from the narcissistic parent themselves. Because the narcissistic parent is always lying about the scapegoat's character, and oftentimes it might not just be the narcissist, it might be everyone in the family lies on the scapegoat. And so because they're always being lied about and told that they're this horrible person and that, again, they're the issue and to blame for everything, they have to deal with how other people see them. They have to deal with how other people view them, because most people that they deal with aren't trying to get to the bottom of the truth. They just assume whatever the narcissistic parent is being told about them is the truth. And so even if they don't know the child directly, even if they've never had any real interactions with them, they will believe the narcissistic parent blindly. So any interaction they have with this child, they see them through the lens of the lies. And so scapegoats have to not only have to carry the burden and brunt of what's going on within the family, but they have to deal with how other people see them. And when other people see you as a bad child or a horrible child, they also mistreat you. And they might not mistreat you outright, but they'll give you dirty looks, or they'll just assume that you're up to no good, and they'll always look at you with suspicion. And or they might directly treat you badly because of the lies told by the narcissistic parent or the entire family. And so they have to deal with all of that mistreatment. And a lot of times a scapegoat doesn't even know the extent of what type of lies are being told about them. So they can't even defend themselves if they wanted to. But they know that people are looking at them sideways and they don't really know why. And so they have to deal with that. They have to carry that burden of the misconception of them. And so my point is that basically everyone just automatically sees the child as bad. And this is painful for the scapegoat because for obvious reasons, they oftentimes feel that it's a lost cause to ever be understood or to ever be liked or to ever even be seen for who they really are. So they're just stuck with the label of being a bad child, again, not only from their family, but to anybody their family has spoken to. And the sad thing is that I can say this with almost 100% confidence, that most scapegoated children are anything but bad. They actually usually have a heart of gold, and they usually have the biggest hearts in the family, but nobody would ever know it, because the narcissistic parent is, again, lying on them so much. And that is the whole reason why the narcissistic parent is lying about them, because they don't want others to know that they're actually a good child. And so, yes, that is extremely painful to have to carry and experience. Because of how scapegoats are oftentimes treated by their family and extended family or friends, they will oftentimes feel that they don't fit in or that they rarely fit in. And so they will oftentimes develop a lot of anxiety or social anxiety around people. And this anxiety around people is a fear that there is something wrong with them. Because they are always treated as if there's something wrong with them, they are afraid that if you also find out that there is something wrong with them, that you too will hate them or dislike them. And so they have the anxiety, and anxiety is basically a push and pull feeling inside of you. So you want close relationships, but you're afraid of them because, again, if you find out there's something wrong with them, you too will abandon them and hate them. So they may even isolate themselves due to this, just to avoid all of that altogether. And so this isolation that they do with themselves, as a byproduct of how they're being treated, they will oftentimes be seen as perhaps a loner. But they are a loner because they find that this is safer. This is safe for them to isolate and be a loner because, for one, nobody is there for them anyway. But again, if you get too close to them, you may also decide that you don't like them like their family and everybody else treats them. So they will become hyper independent because of this, but this hyper independence is not always by choice. Some independence is good. However, it is always nice to know that you can count on somebody else. But unfortunately, a scapegoat does not have that mentality. Actually, they have a mentality of no one is there for them. So they really have no choice but to be hyper independent, even if they crave a healthy give and take that most people get within a healthy relationship. But again, it is safer for them to just be on their own or be a loner or to isolate themselves. But in truth, most scapegoats are used to being in relationships where they are the only one who is giving. And they're usually the only one who is giving because, again, when they're within their family, the dynamic within the family is they are expected to give, especially to the narcissistic parent. And so everyone in the family is expected to please the narcissistic parent, especially the scapegoat. And so they also will become people pleasers, or could be. And they are trained to give without expecting anything back, because to expect anything back would mean that they are good. And the narcissistic parent's programming and training is to make sure that the child knows that they are bad. So to receive anything is to be seen as good. And so they are not good. So why would the child expect to get anything back? And so because this is the message that they are given, they start to feel that they actually don't deserve anything in return, and they actually don't deserve friends. And so some of the isolation that they do, or the loner part of themselves that happens when they become a loner or whatnot, is sometimes because they actually feel that they don't deserve friends. Not that they think they're too good for anybody, but because they have been told over and over that they don't deserve shit. So they often feel that they don't even deserve friends. But because the scapegoat is the one with the most emotional intelligence within the family, this sensitivity can oftentimes almost become psychic-like, meaning they will oftentimes have deep insight into their abuser and others in the family. Some of this sensitivity, as I've mentioned, is almost psychic-like because they are emotionally aware, but it oftentimes gets heightened because it is out of survival, or it is out of survival to be hyper attuned to everybody around them. Scapegoated children oftentimes have to watch for cues all the time of the people around them, especially the narcissistic parent. Is the narcissistic parent happy today? Are they not happy? Are others happy with me? Are others not happy with me? Because if they didn't look for those cues, again, that would make them feel unsafe, because the narcissistic parent oftentimes was extremely unpredictable. And so this heightened sensitivity that they already had becomes even more heightened, and like I said, psychic-like almost, because it is out of survival. So this people-pleasing quality that they might develop over time is due to the fact that if others weren't happy, like I said, they weren't safe. And so it's not always that they're being manipulative or that they're not really trying to make someone feel happy because they enjoy it. But a lot of times it was because if they didn't, the consequences were far worse. So when a scapegoated child becomes a people pleaser, they are not doing this to be manipulative. And a matter of fact, from my experience with other scapegoats, and even myself, I can speak from experience, most scapegoats enjoy making other people happy. But I'm talking about when it becomes unhealthy and they're doing it out of, if this person is not happy, I am unsafe. But again, when you're doing it from a survival standpoint, that's what's going to happen. And yes, this hyper alertness makes them tapped in, and like I said, almost in a psychic-like manner. But oftentimes, scapegoats can also experience burnout because of this hyper alertness. And more of how this psychic alertness can play out. If a child is being physically abused or sexually abused, they can oftentimes get what are called psychic downloads from their abuser. And this is something that I experienced, and so I'm going to try to describe what I mean by this psychic download. So when you are being physically abused or sexually abused, basically whenever there is body-to-body contact, a physical contact of some sort. That's why I say you could be physically abused but not sexually abused. But if you're sexually abused, then of course, you're having body-to-body contact. But anyway, my point is when there's that body-to-body contact, there is an energy exchange. And in that energy exchange, there is information. And that is why abused children more often than not always understands their abuser because of this psychic download that happens. And not only will they understand their abuser, but they'll oftentimes bond with their abuser. And this is oftentimes called Stockholm Syndrome. But we know of Stockholm Syndrome through, we use that term when it applies to, say, kidnapped victims or people who are held hostage. Oh, they got Stockholm Syndrome. Well, I would say the same thing happens to children who are being scapegoated, or even children who are golden children. All have Stockholm Syndrome in some way because children are hardwired to love their parents, period. And it doesn't matter if they are being mistreated by their parent or not. As I've mentioned, children are hardwired to love their parents. So I would say almost every child who's in a narcissistic, toxic family environment has Stockholm Syndrome. So back to this psychic download that I was talking about. So as I mentioned, a lot of children, because the child that is usually chosen to be the scapegoat, because they have a heightened sensitivity, this can play out almost psychic-like. So a lot of children, like myself, was able to get downloads of their parent and get information. And what I mean by that is that the reason why they understand their abuser so well is because they know how their abuser is feeling. And even myself, I would know how my mom is feeling. I would even get images of her past or what she went through growing up type of thing. And so you get a lot of information. And this might have also been out of survival as well. But because I was able to understand my mom, I was able to navigate around her a lot of the time, especially when I got older. So it was easier for me to kind of dodge her. But like I said, a lot of kids who have a heightened sensitivity will get downloads like I was talking about from their abuser. And some kids might not even realize that what they are getting is a psychic download because they will mistake it as something that they are actually feeling. Like, for example, if a child feels dirty after an abusive episode, or they feel shameful, or they feel disgusted with themselves after, that is actually a form of psychic download because that is actually how the abuser feels. They feel dirty, they feel shameful, they feel small, they feel vulnerable, they don't feel important. And so An abused child may mistake all of those feelings that they are getting as their own, but really what that is an energy transfer. The abusive person is transferring how they feel onto the child. And so if you have been a person who's been abused and you have felt all of those things and you think that you are now the dirty person or you are now the shameful person, that is actually not you. That is actually the abuser's feelings that they are transferring onto you. But anyway, another burden that a scapegoat has to carry is the feeling of no resolve, meaning no matter what they do or don't do, it's never good enough. Because they are the scapegoat, everything they do is wrong. So they can never do anything right. Unlike the golden child who can do no wrong, the scapegoat can do no right. And this can be incredibly stressful because all children want to make their parents proud, or all children want their parents to be happy with them. But when you are a child who can do nothing right, even if you got straight A's, even if you were good in academics or sports or whatever it is, or you had a talent in something, because again, it's never acknowledged and you are never seen for who you are and you can never do right, a scapegoated child can oftentimes feel hopeless due to this. But again, that is what the narcissistic parent wants. They want the child to feel hopeless. But even though scapegoats are made to feel hopeless, that no one will be there for them, no one will believe them, that they can do no right, and again, they get that psychic download from their parents, of feeling dirty, and all those things that the parent is actually feeling but transferring onto the child. Even though they're feeling all of these things, the silver lining with the scapegoat is that deep, deep down, they have an understanding that this is really not their shit. Like somewhere in their gut, they know this is not their shit. And so a lot of them, and this is again the silver lining, a lot of them will seek out help later in life or seek healing later in life. And so there is hope for them. But before they get their healing or before they seek out healing, yes, they do carry a lot. And another thing that they carry is that because their voice was taken away and their power was taken away or attempted to early on in life, they oftentimes will try to go invisible because, again, that goes again a little bit with the isolation and becoming a loner, is because in their mind, even if this is subconscious, if I am invisible, nobody can hurt me. And so because they're so used to, again, having everything dumped on them and even emotionally abused, physically abused, in some cases sexually abused, and all those things, again, everybody is quote unquote hurting them. So a lot of them will seek out to be a loner to some degree, but this is their way of trying to go invisible, because if they don't exist, nobody can hurt them. And going back to their voice being taken away, they may have a hard time standing up for themselves any time in their life or later in life. And so a lot of times their throat chakra will close up because of this. Or if you're somebody and you always feel like this knot in your throat and you've been a scapegoated child, it's because you had your voice taken away. And so your throat chakra closes up. And children who have been sexually abused, for example, their root chakra could either be too open or it could close altogether. And what I mean by that is children who get sexually abused, they could either become a nympho or a nymphomaniac, and so therefore their chakra is too open, or it can close altogether and they could hate sex and not want anything to do with sex. And so that part of them can close off. And sometimes scapegoated children can seem like they're always on the verge of tears, or something small could happen on the outside, so to speak, and then they all of a sudden just break down, and someone might be like, why are they just crying over the smallest thing? And it's because, again, they are kind of always on alert, and because they've always been blamed for everything and they're always being punished for everything, any small form of mistake that is done on their part, or that they perceive on their part, or even if someone raises their voice a little bit, they may break down a lot because, again, they are so used to being punished all the time. And so before a scapegoat heals, they can always feel like they are on a verge of a breakdown. But what is very sad is that, like I said, any small mistake that is done on their part, in their mind, it's something huge and terrible. And then again, they're this terrible person because they made this small mistake. And that is because that is how they've been programmed. That is how they've been trained. And because they were trained and programmed that everything is their fault, that is how they start to look at things. So someone could be upset, somebody could be mad, or something could go wrong. It could be in the workplace, it could be at school, it could be anywhere. Even a stranger, for example, could be upset. And a scapegoated child will automatically feel that everything is their fault. That's how that training starts to play out, that every small thing that is around them, and if somebody's upset, if a stranger is upset, even, again, it doesn't even have to do with them, because they were being blamed and punished for things that didn't even have to do with them in their own home. And so they carry this burden into every aspect of their life, which can give somebody a lot of anxiety because of that. You can only imagine if you feel like every small thing could possibly be your fault. So you can only imagine how much of a burden and how painful that can be if you truly feel everything is your fault, as I've mentioned. And I should also say that if you ever hear of somebody committing suicide, more often than not, it was somebody who was scapegoated in their life, or a child who was bullied or whatnot. They are more likely than not the ones who will commit suicide. And the other thing is that someone who is, say, a school shooter, for example, was more than likely a golden child. And so why is this? Why is it that a scapegoat is more likely to commit suicide and, say, a golden child is more likely to become a school shooter, for example? It is because scapegoats are taught to punish themselves. Because they are taught everything is their fault and they are the issue with everything, if they start to believe it, and or they've gotten to a place where they've been so broken down, why wouldn't they want to get rid of the issue? And if the issue is themselves, why wouldn't they commit suicide? And so if that's the case with a scapegoated child, they're more likely to take their own life. Why is it then that a golden child is more likely to take the lives of somebody else or become, say, a school shooter? It is because the golden child is taught that again, they can do no wrong, and that everyone else is to blame and everyone else is the issue. And because the golden child also has their own anxiety and their own shame and their own pain, they also have a lot of anxiety around what's going on with them. But instead of taking themselves out, because like I said, their programming training is to blame everyone else, and so if everyone else is the issue, they're more likely to take the lives of other people. They're more likely to take lives of others that they feel are the issue, because that was their programming and their training. So yes, on an extreme level, a scapegoat is more likely to take their own life, while a golden child is more likely to take the life of somebody else. And why is it that a scapegoat is more likely to punish themselves? It is because they are the only safe person to punish, because they know the narcissistic parent isn't going to change. They may have even asked for help on the outside from others, and others didn't believe them or take them seriously, or nobody else helped them, and so no one was in their corner. And so, again, if they are told everything is their fault and they are to blame for everything, who else do they have to take anything out on? Because again, and it's not that they need to take anything out on, but again, they have all this abusive energy that's been thrown onto them, and that energy has to go somewhere. And so it can't go outward, so they turn it inward. And so they are the only safest person to take things out on. So hence why they punish themselves. So if they don't take their own life outright, they could develop a lot of unhealthy vices, because again, that energy that's in them has to go somewhere. So the vices that they could develop could be endless. They could develop an eating disorder. They could become a cutter. They could become an alcoholic. Like I said, these vices that they could develop could manifest in many different ways. A lot of scapegoated children, especially if they were sexually abused, could end up in the strip club or in some forms of the sex industry, continuing to act out certain abusive behaviors that they had in their childhood. Furthermore, another burden that scapegoats will most likely carry is that even if they leave their family dynamic or family environment altogether, in most cases, they will be unhealed, right? Like leaving the environment is just the first step, so to speak. But because they are unhealed, they will more likely than not continue to attract narcissists and narcissistic people into their lives later in life. And I will do a video topic on that alone, why scapegoats attract narcissists over and over. But that will most likely happen, that they will get more narcissists in their life, even if they leave the family dynamic. And this can cause a lot of issues, and it can also prolong their healing, because if they keep attracting narcissists into their life, again, continuing the abuse that they had in their childhood, just with someone else, again, this can prolong their healing process. And when this happens, when a scapegoat continues to attract more narcissists into their life, even after they've left their toxic family environment, this also can make them feel hopeless in their life. And this makes them feel hopeless because they feel that their chances of ever being cared about in a real way or loved in a real way, again, is hopeless. And to them, the idea of ever being able to have a healthy relationship with somebody seems more like a fantasy than a reality, meaning they fear that it may never be a reality. And another painful reality for some scapegoats can be that even if they leave their toxic family environment, but they stay in the same town, so to speak, like some scapegoats leave and they leave the town and they start all over, literally, like they move to another state, etc. But let's say they just move out of the house or the environment and they're still in the same community. Like I said, some become loners or they isolate themselves. And so in this case, that's what will happen. Some will stay in the same town or community, but will isolate themselves and will fear joining the community again, because the lies that have been told about them, that they are so horrible and bad, and because the people around them believe that, they don't feel welcome to join the community again. And so they will live a life of isolation and solitude, and not always by choice. And because they were treated as such an outcast, they will escape just enough to not be hurt. And so they will just stay out of people's way. They will, like I said, try to become invisible, because again, if they are invisible, nobody can hurt them, and they're not hurting anybody, because again, everybody sees them as a horrible person and an outcast. So the sad truth for them is that they will live a life of isolation. But as I've mentioned, a lot of scapegoats will later in life seek out healing one way or another, if, again, they haven't been broken down too bad. Because some scapegoats, unfortunately, can be broken down to such a degree where they do give up hope and all that stuff. But most, if they haven't, will seek out healing. So there is a silver lining at the end of the tunnel, or there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And guess what? That light has always been themselves. But before they get healing, or before they realize the light is indeed inside them, as you can see from what I mentioned in this video, that scapegoats do carry a lot. And it's extremely painful to be a scapegoat because it's not easy being the trash can for everybody else's dysfunction. But on that note, I'm actually going to end today's video. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and turn on notifications. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!